Welcome to the Empowered Team podcast. It's Kari Schneider here, your host, and I have an amazing guest here today, Katie Richardson. Now, Katie has this incredible background in design. She's grown a business to the multi-million figures. She has been on shows like the Ellen DeGeneres Show, the Today Show. She has really refined her learnings in business to be able to help other people really elevate theirs. I love having you on, Katie. Welcome to the Empower Team
Hey, Kari.
podcast. Please tell us a little bit more
Sure.
about your background. How did you go from you now help other entrepreneurs, you coach, you
Yeah.
help them really elevate their thinking, elevate their businesses. However, you came by it honestly. You really started your own business, you grew your own business, you
hmm
put in the hard work. Tell us a little bit about where you came from and how this all happened.
Yeah. Yeah. My story is kind of this unexpected adventure and something that I just absolutely love. So I got started as a product designer, did really well in school. I got, a scholarship from General Motors. This was all unexpectedly, by the way, because like I wasn't super studious, but I realized that I'm just really curious about life and the world and how things work. And that led me to product design. And I ended up really excelling in something kind of for the first time in my life and loved the program. Actually, madly fell in love with a man who was in the program. We got married at the end of our school season and we started having kids. And there was a Christmas break where we just said, hey, why don't we take the next 2 weeks and design a product that will allow him to quit his job and we can work together and build our own brand, our own company, and live the life that we've always dreamed of. As designers, like you really intentionally create things, right? Including your life. And he was working for a consultancy and he didn't love that he was giving his best ideas to somebody else. And it was like, let's save our best ideas and use those for ourselves. So while we were having kids, we did that. And that company ended up, like you mentioned, becoming a multi-million-dollar international company. And we have distribution in 2,000 stores in the US and 26 different countries. But about 8 years ago, we were looking for a strategic partner, and somebody made us an offer that we just couldn't refuse. So we ended up exiting that company 8 years ago, and I pivoted into business coaching. Kari, it was the most unexpected pivot in my journey. Like, I just did not feel qualified to tell somebody else what to do in their business. And yet, I had these people coming to me and they saw what I had done in business. And what we had done in business was awesome and great on its own. But it wasn't just that, it was the fact that I'd worked alongside my husband and he was my partner. We were co-founders, that we were happily married and that we were having kids while we were doing this. And I seemed really healthy and grounded and energetic and happy. And so I would meet people over the years who would meet me in person and maybe they were following me on Instagram and they're like, wait, you're really happy. Like you actually seem like this is working for you. I'm like, yeah. And what what I was realizing was I had built my business in a really unconventional way. And I
I,
hadn't gone to business school. I honestly was building my business alongside God, and He was kind of my co-creator, if you will. And so I'd done things in a really unconventional way, and that is what ultimately has now benefited me as a business coach. Is I'm really exceptional at identifying the core issues. Like too often we try and fix things, but we're looking at the surface. And
Mhm.
I really love getting at the core of what's the core thing that's creating that issue, and can we repair or change or shift one thing that then like fixes a whole suite of problems. And that's kind of a puzzle that I like to solve. And so today I'm a business coach. We live in Puerto Rico. Our kids homeschool. I'm able to travel over the world, but primarily I do a lot of my stuff just from here in Puerto Rico. And so that's my story.
This is so good. And I love hearing all this. The first thought I had when you said we're gonna have our kids and start our own thing and we're gonna do this, the first thought I had was bold. That is
Mm,
bold. That is powerful. And then as you kept describing it, I can hear the congruence. I can hear the alignment, whether it's your faith, whether it is knowing what you want and following what you want versus the second guessing that so many people
Mhm.
do, especially if they come from
Sure.
backgrounds that are challenging. They come from backgrounds where they've believed that they need to please, and they're trying to undo that in their own lives, find what makes them happy. But ultimately, this environment where you've got kids, and we're not talking 2 kids, we're talking 4 kids.
Mhm.
And one of the things that wasn't in your bio and that you didn't describe as well, you homeschool
Yeah.
and you're working with your husband and you're creating things with your husband. And you
Yeah.
just also describe this transition from an exit from your company. And you can
Mhm.
mention the company if you'd like, but
Yeah, it's called Pudge,
Hutch,
P-U-J. Go to
yeah,
pudge.com. They still have like my family on the website, even though we've been out of the company for 8 years.
that's awesome. So you exit your company and you live life on your terms now, transitioning to coaching, which in your words, it seemed like this unconventional or unexpected
Mhm.
shift. But then at the same time, if I'm an outsider looking in and having experience being a brick and mortar entrepreneur, selling my business, going into coaching, just there's some parallels there. But to
Sure.
me, when I look at that, I feel the creativity because that creative outlet happens so much when you're coaching. You're
Oh,
literally
yeah.
problem solving. You're looking at someone else's problem, someone else's thinking. And the way you described it, and I just love this, is the core issues. Now,
Mhm.
to me, and I have a background in physiology and high performance sport and things like that,
So
it
cool.
it sounds to me like the primary cause. You're not looking at the symptoms, which
Yeah.
you're calling, it sounds like the suite of problems. So instead of the
Yeah.
suite of problems that everybody has a laundry list of suites of problems, it could be home problems, business problems, money problems, partner problems, any of these
Mhm.
problems. It's not necessarily a suite of problems, it's the core issues, which
Yeah.
that ends up being the primary cause. Everything else is a byproduct. Everything else is the if it's an amazing primary cause, then you're going to have amazing byproducts. Otherwise, you're going to have a suite of problems that contribute to more problems.
Yeah.
So there's something you brought up that I just, it's too juicy, it's too good. It's the stuff that we got to get into. And I personally have experienced this as well. It's the partner problems. Now you are in
Mhm.
business with your husband. You've probably
Yeah.
experienced a thing or two. You've
Yeah.
just described being happy, balanced. You're creating the life of intention, the life you really want. You've designed it.
Mhm.
Now, when you have a partner that maybe isn't aligned with the same things, or there's some conflict and there hasn't been conflict resolution, there's some issues there. What are the things that you're seeing with your clients? What are the things that you've experienced? They're the primary issues that people are just, I have a partner in my business. It might be my
Mhm.
spouse. It might be my sister. It might be somebody that's I thought was one of my best, most trusted human beings in the
Yes.
world, friend, whoever. But this is a serious relationship and we have issues and it's stopping what needs to happen in the business.
Yeah.
What does that look like? What are some of the key issues that come up?
Yeah. So I actually have a framework that I walk people through, and I'm happy to share that with you. And I have to say that the congruency that you see in me is not where I started at all. And maybe another episode we can talk about how insecure I was and how shy and unsure of myself I was. And I had to overcome a lot of those things to get to this point. And even in partnership with my husband, I was a people pleaser and very codependent with him in the beginning. And so I had to learn how to unwind those things and like give validity to my perspective and find my voice. And those are things that I have done over the years. We've been married for 23 years now. The biggest issue that I see when it comes to co-partners, co-founders, board members, executive teams is the finger pointing and the blaming. Is your co-founder creating issues? Yes, very likely, 100%. And is there a way in which you are contributing to that? Yes. Too often we try and make other people change. And the sad reality is you're not in control of that person. There's one person in the world that you're in control of, and it's yourself. But looking at myself and being brutally honest about my piece of it and how I'm contributing to it is the last thing anybody wants to do, right? That is so uncomfortable. And it's funny, Kari, because the people who work with me have built a business between 5 million and 50 million, right? Wildly successful individuals. And they are very disciplined, very hard workers. And so when someone hires me and we start working together, I have to warn them and I say, look, this is going to be hard. I know you know hard work, but this is harder than anything you've ever done before. And like at first, you're like, all right, bring it on, Katie. Like she has no
Yeah.
idea
This is
how
what
good
I
I am at
wanted.
it.
This is what I signed up for. That's how it
Yes.
starts. Yes.
And then we'll get like 6 weeks into it.
Yeah.
And they were like, now I know what you mean. Like, this is so hard because you have to confront yourself.
It's a hard thing.
embarrassing. It's embarrassing. You feel shame around it. You want to run and hide from it. You want to deny it. You want to defend your actions, defend the things that you've done. And if you can stick with me and move past that, you enter this realm where you are so free, free of the guilt, free of the shame, free to own your dysfunction, and then free to make changes. And do I also work with the partner a lot of the times? And does the partner end up making a lot of changes too? Yes, 100%. But it takes two to tango, and we need more than one person to change. And a lot of times, even if I just work with one individual, and I can tell you multiple stories where I've only worked with one, when one person changes, the dynamic changes, the partnership changes. It cannot stay the same. The gravity of the old ways, the gravity of the dysfunction that you're currently stuck in is strong, largely because you're blind to a lot of it. And so what I do is I show people what the traps are and what the dysfunction is and what your habitual tendencies are. And then using my framework, it's called Vital, using my framework, I walk you through and I help you break out of the dysfunctional patterns. And that's the piece that is so freeing. It's so exciting. So if it's helpful, Kari, I'm happy to walk through Vital and just kind of show you what this framework looks like.
Do it, because one of the things I want to really highlight here for the listeners is that you kind of downplayed in the very beginning, I didn't expect to go from exiting to coaching, and I didn't have training in business. Didn't go to business school. But the more important thing is that you've lived it and you've experienced it, and then you've really, really tried it on. And going through those things, I find, tend to be so much more valuable than book learning. And so many times, and I don't mean to downplay book learning, because I'm a big fan of education, big fan of research, big fan of all kinds of things that way. But I think there's so much to be said for what you've created based on what you've experienced, based on what works for you, based on what then works for other people as you try it on for yourself, test it out on other people. So yes, absolutely. Let's go through this Vital framework, because I think it's something that is vital. Oh.
Yeah. Well, and to build on what you were just saying, book learning is great. It's valuable. But if you're not implementing and living the principles that you're learning in the book, it will not change your life. And that's really frustrating for a lot of very smart people who have read all of the books or learned from the coaches and read the stories, and they're struggling and they don't realize they're not living the principles. And so application is the core focus of all of my coaching and training. Is we get really good at finding the places where you're not living the principles, and then we just start applying it. It's really great. So Vital came out of my own experience as a product designer. I love iteration and improvement and trial and error, right? And then learning from the experiences. So over the years, I started to develop my own mental models that helped me then build this wildly successful business and life, I would say. And, as I started taking on clients, that's when I really first started to see, oh, I look at things differently than you. And I have these mental models that have really helped me make decisions and take action. And so it took me a little bit to like really see my own perspective in a way.
Mhm.
And but over the years, I started to see that here are kind of the core things that you need to create alignment with your team. Really quick, alignment is awesome and great, but I think the thing that founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs, creators are most excited about is those several $1 million plus opportunities that are just out there and they just want to go after them. But unfortunately, when you have conflict in your business partnership with your executive team, across your team,
Mhm.
it creates so much drag and distraction. And your time is extremely valuable. And if your time is being spent in conversations and meetings that go nowhere and you're going in circles, it's so infuriating because you just want to be set free to go after those much more
Yeah.
exciting opportunities. So I realized that sometimes talking about alignment, it can almost seem like boring.
Mhm.
And like, but if you stick with me here for a second, I will set you free. The
Mhm.
vital framework will set you free. Okay, so the first piece of vital is vision system. We've got a system where you can very detailed articulate your vision to your team. What I have found is entrepreneurs can be really edited in how they communicate with their team. And if they don't have all of the details of your vision, they're going to feel lost. They're going to feel confused. They're going to come back to you over and over and over again. You're going to be repeating yourself a lot in meetings. So once you have the vision system and you know how to really effectively communicate this vision to your team, it gives you way more time back to go do the fun, exciting things that you really want to do. So that's the first piece of vital. The
So
next
this
is
is, so hold on,
vision
I just want to
system.
pause here. Hold on. Because this is so good. And I want people to really emphasize this, that this is the vision. It looks
Yes.
like this. This is how we do it. This is what it looks like here. This is what it
Mm-hmm.
looks like here. This is what it looks like here. This is how we do that. And this is how we take it forward. This is how we make the next step of the vision. Like that kind of thing. Is that how
Oh,
detailed you're
yeah.
talking?
Yeah. And here's the thing, if you're like, you know where you're going, but if your team doesn't know where they're going, it feels like you're walking into the dark. And
Mhm.
if you're walking into the dark into your bedroom, right, that you live in, you know right where the light switch is on the
Cool.
wall, even though it's dark, it's totally
Yeah.
easy. It's not a big deal. When you walk into a room that is pitch black that you've never been into, that's intimidating, right? Am I going to get a coffee table at my shins? Am I going to get a cupboard? That's kind of what it's like for your team if they don't have a really clear, detailed sense for where they are going. They're walking into the dark, they're going to start wandering like cats, and it's going to be frustrating for everybody. So, yes, the vision system helps them feel safe, it helps them feel confident, it helps them feel secure. They know exactly what they need to do every day. And then alongside that is the inspired path system. That's the I of vital. There are about 1,000 ways to get to that place, that vision that you have. And if you don't go on the path that aligns for you and your values, you're making a huge mistake. And so the inspired path is about making sure that you are able to live your values. This is really important to me personally. It's important to the people that I work with. I was just reading this great article from Clay Christensen, who is he's now passed away, but he's written The Innovator's Dilemma. He's hired by very large corporations to identify how to innovate and grow and scale their companies. And he talked about being a Harvard Business School educator and having people come back, former students come back, and they'd been wildly successful in their business, but they were divorced. They didn't have a relationship with their kids. Their health was destroyed. And he was like, you missed the whole point. And if we don't understand the purpose for behind what it is that we're doing, we will build a hollow, empty life. It's really devastating. And I had that kind of inflection point in my business where I was on that path, Kari, and it terrified me because I saw how if I continued down that road, I was going to end up in a divorce. I was not going to have a relationship with my kids. And I was like, that is not what I want in my life. And I was trying to figure out how to make these two worlds that seemed really incompatible, right? My business and then the relationships in my life, they seemed really incompatible. And as a designer, I was like, let's figure out how to innovate and bring these seemingly incompatible worlds together. That's what I do. And from there, I started to understand that if your business is creating conflict in your marriage, in your health, in your family, there is no level of success in that business that will magically make that disappear. And you have to start today designing and engineering a path where these two worlds can coexist. And it is possible. It might seem impossible from your perspective. I get that. That's where I was, and that's where all my clients are when they come to me. But it doesn't take long for them to merge. And I've helped people achieve impossible feats in 90 days. So it's absolutely possible. And that's what the Inspired Path system is about. The next is the team system. If you're playing big, you can't do this on your own. And entrepreneurs tend to be really multi-skilled, multi-talented. And so they end up doing everything in the beginning. That's kind of what you do when you're starting a company. But at some point, you have to start handing things over to your team, or you become the bottleneck of the business and it will destroy you. It'll become a monster in your life and you won't be able to serve everybody. And I usually see that at like 1 or 2 million. You're definitely at that limit. And it's time to really understand how to empower your team. And what's tricky, Kari, is it's a totally different skill set. It is learnable though. Like you can learn how to do this. And when you learn how to do it in a way where it's really natural and intuitive for you, and that's what I do. Like I want everything to resonate for you.
Yeah.
And so when you learn how to empower your team, they will go from being these entitled, irritated, almost teenagers. I've witnessed this with my clients who are, anytime there's not a customer right in front of them, then they're just scrolling their phone. That's not okay. But you don't want to become a dictator. And that's often the people who I end up working with. They're men and women of integrity who really care about people, and they don't want to be a jerk. But they get caught in this trap of avoiding being the jerk boss. But in doing so, they end up entitling their team. And it's possible to transform and change that. And, a client who's coming to mind, he's an incredible world-renowned surgeon. And he had a team of about 20 plus, just fully entitled individuals, not performing.
Yeah.
And, we've radically transformed the team, which is so important because, he literally has people's life on the line. And there are times when he wants and needs to travel, whether it's, teaching the next recruits season. I'm not finding the right word, but like the residents, the up and coming surgeons, he has really honed his craft and he feels strongly about leaving a legacy and like really teaching
mentoring. Yeah.
Yes. He was saying no to everything, not traveling, including with his family, by the way, because when
couldn't leave his team.
couldn't leave his team, he literally could not trust his patients' lives with his team. Yeah. And so we worked and used the team system, and it's totally worked. And what's so beautiful, Kari, is I won't go into his story. He's Armenian, grew up in Iran, was shipped off to save his life when he was 10 on his own. Just the most wild story. But this is a man who grew up Armenian, but had never been to Armenia. And the Armenian Surgical Council just hosted him. They flew him out to Armenia. So it was his first time in Armenia. And he got to do a live surgery in front of Armenian surgeon residents, surgical. Yes, to teach. And it was just like, he was like, Katie, I didn't think about the team once. Like, I know they've got it now. And it's so meaningful, right? Going back to
the real impact that people want to see in what they're creating comes to fruition instead of being bottlenecked by what they can't do because their time and attention is still being focused on babysitting.
Yes.
And it's tough to babysit for anyone, but that's not who they should be babysitting. Your team is not for babysitting.
That is the best word. And it's so infuriating for a high performer to spend their time babysitting. It's such a waste of time. Yeah.
And if you have other high performers on that team, because typically they're split into thirds, there might be high performers, there might be the steady eddies, there might be some low performers too who could step up a little bit, but those high performers are going to leave because they're not able to either initiate or go to their full potential. So the high performers are going to leave. The steady
Yeah.
eddies are going to, kind of hang out and maybe not know what to do because they're not told what to do. And the low performers are going to take advantage of being able to do whatever. And
Yeah.
meanwhile, all of these humans are normal, wonderful humans who have potential but aren't realizing their own potential because of the leader. And that's the hard thing for people to actually
Yes.
embrace, is that, oh, this is on me. Meanwhile, I think I'm doing them a favor. I'm actually doing them an awful disservice.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
100%.
tough. And
Yeah.
it's a tough
Like,
pill to swallow.
yeah. Yeah. Like that team that we were describing previously, nobody's happy coming into work when it's that kind of an environment. They're all just enduring every day. And honestly, you'll get a lot of people calling in sick when they're not actually sick because they just say to themselves, I can't do it again today. So that's another benefit is, now the team, everybody loves what they do. They feel lit up by their work. There's purpose, there's intention
Yeah.
behind what they're doing, and they're all building something really meaningful. And
And
he's
that's when they're
now,
the happiest. The people
yes,
naturally are the happiest when they're committed to something that's larger than themselves. And when
yeah,
that is happening and they are contributing to something like that, that progress, that joy, that contribution, that's the fulfilling part of life. It's amazing. It's not just the, quick fix, oh, I'm
yeah,
happy because I ate a cookie. It's the lasting fulfillment of, I'm contributing something that's making a difference. And that is what we're designed for as humans, whether we realize it or not, whether we've come to that
100%.
kind of aha moment for our own lives. That's
Yeah,
fantastic. I love it.
yeah.
Okay, we're on A.
A. A is for alignment. And this kind of goes back to where we started, which was what's going on inside of you. And I often discover when I first start working with somebody, there's a lot of internal division. And if a lot of your energy is spent fighting your internal battles, that means you are less resourced to go pursue these much bigger multi-million-dollar opportunities. And so we silence that noise, that chaos that's happening inside of you. And some people have been kind of coping and operating with that great division and noise for so long, they don't know that it's possible to create this alignment. And so we start by creating alignment for the CEO, the founder, and then we can start to radiate and extend that to the team so that we have alignment with the team. And then the last piece is the leadership system. Leading was not natural and intuitive to me. I'm really functional on my own. And that's kind of what led me to entrepreneurship. It was like, I'll just figure everything out.
Solopreneur.
Yes. And, I find the same thing with founders, CEOs, entrepreneurs is leadership is in a lot of ways, it's counterintuitive. And so I take them through the leadership system and it sets them free. Suddenly they have a framework. They know what to do, how to deal with situations. It's no longer this kind of internal chaos when someone else brings you a problem. The example that I use a lot with clients, it comes from, I think it was from Traction, the Orange
Mhm.
Book. Yes.
Yeah, it's a
Um,
good one.
they there's the analogy that you're in your office and you have a team member knock on the door. You open the door and they've got this wild, crazy monkey, and they're like, hey, we got this problem. And you're like, just give it to me. And then the next person knocks on the door, same thing, wild, crazy monkey. I'm like, just give it to me. And by the end of the day, you got an office full of wild, crazy monkeys. And then you're doing your team's job for them.
Yeah.
And again, I see this so often because because you're fast at it. You're the best of the team, because it's just easier that way. Well, maybe in the short term, but you start doing this a long term, and pretty soon you have created what one of my clients had created, just kind of this, you've painted yourself into a corner. He was working 120 hours a week and his business partner was working 0, but taking home $1 million. You're actively losing your best employees, including former employees who are trying to fire you or, sue you for $1 million.
Yeah.
You have issues in your business partnership, obviously, but surprise, that partner's your uncle. So if there's any sort of issues with that
And it's probably some level
partnership,
of a silent investor or something that you feel like you're on
totally.
for. And yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And if there's any issues with that uncle, it will send mom to the hospital for a mental health break. Yeah.
Mm.
And then you come home at night and you've got a 2 and 3-year-old and your wife wants to know, like, you're at the table with us, but you are not here. Where are you? Right?
And
Why aren't
why?
you present with us?
And aren't we
Yes.
important to you?
Yes.
Yes, you're
And
most important to me. That's why I'm going through this.
how much longer is it going to be like this? Like,
Exactly.
I need to know if I have what it takes to make it another 10, 15 years of
Well,
this, because I can't handle this.
this is such a great segue, because leading with integrity in the way that I work with leadership and the systems that I work with, it starts with leading ourselves. So take us from this leadership system into what does this look like for those conflicts and how we're leading ourselves. Like, give us a
Mhm.
couple of examples, maybe a family type example or a board or business partner type example, but the things that you've seen and some of the key things that if people ignore, there's going
Mhm.
to be perpetuated problems. What are a couple of the things that are so that you see frequently? It's so repetitive, and you
Mhm.
now know, okay, this has to be a thing that is always addressed in any business partner, anybody involved, any spousal relationship in business. It always needs to be addressed so that it doesn't become a problem later. Kill the monster while it's little kind of analogy, in that if this isn't addressed, it will always grow into a bigger problem than it currently is. What would you say are one or two of those
Yeah.
things that need addressing, no matter what, no matter what type of partnership? Make sure this is not swept under the rug.
The first one that immediately comes to mind is agreements versus assumptions. I have a
Mm.
client who he's building $1 billion business. The company's growing really rapid. They had a kind of an exciting but unexpected initial buyout, and then that partner has kept him on board. And as part of the buyout, he had certain payments that were scheduled to be sent to him. And those payments started and then they stopped. And he was saying in his head, well, I mean, it's just tight right now. Sales are a little bit down, and that's okay. And I'm not going to talk to them about it. And I'm like, and so he kept giving me excuses every time. And I said, when's the rest of this payout coming? And he was like, I don't know. I reached out to them. They said they'll get back to me. And I was like, you are in no man's land right now. This is dangerous territory. You have an agreement with people that contractually, he had an
Yeah, it's
agreement with people, his partners, and they weren't delivering on their agreement. And he was making all kinds of assumptions to fill in the gaps with them not
when you
delivering
don't
on this
know.
agreement.
Your brain does not like a blank space. It's
Yeah.
going to fill that thing in. So unless we actually fill it in with accurate information, our brain's going to put something in there. That's called the assumption.
Yes.
And we all know the saying that goes with that particular word.
Yeah. So
Assume.
he was so uncomfortable about it. Every time I would bring it up, he would squirm. And I kept saying, you are out of integrity with yourself right now because you have a contract with people and they're not delivering on it. And you're paying the price for that. And that's not okay. If they need to renegotiate, that's fine. Let's have that conversation. But right now, you are in no man's land. And both parties are outside of the agreement. So when you
And it
notice
sets a
yourself
precedent. It sets a precedent by
100%,
continuing it on, and
100%.
then, well, we didn't pay you for the last year, so
Right.
like, it's an awful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. So, he liked these partners. He wanted them to be partners in like his next venture. And so he was being Mr. Nice Guy. And that's a problem for all of the reasons that we've just talked about. So I helped him understand how to approach them powerfully and get the payout. And honestly, Kari, it took like 2 weeks. He kept I would tell him what to do and then he wouldn't do it. And I would hold his feet to the
Yeah.
fire the next week. I'm like, this is not okay. You don't understand the consequences that you're paying as a result of all of this. So he finally did it. And within weeks, they paid him. There was back pay. It was great. It was awesome. I was like, hey, now you're in alignment with your partners. Now we can move forward.
Well, and to your point on being out of integrity with himself, I would imagine that, and you can tell me if this is the case or not, but I would imagine that once that occurred and the payments were coming and he'd taken the action, if there's some reflection on it, that's the kind of behavior that's probably aligned with his values.
100%.
Whereas the other behavior is just going to be multiplying in feeling bad because it's not aligned with his own values. It's not doing anybody a favor, especially himself, but it's not doing them a favor either, because there's going to be back pay. There's going to be other issues. There's going to be more meetings about renegotiating or whatever the future looks like. So it's not doing anybody a favor, even though I mean, this is an intense way to put it. He's lying to himself.
Yes.
To say that
that's the truth.
He is doing them a favor, but he's really not. And that's the thing about, I want to highlight this in a role like yours. That's the thing about having a very competent, high performance coach, that this is the thing. You have their back when we can't see to have our own backs. And that's what we do as coaches is go, listen, I've got your back. There's areas where you're not having your own back and you can't see it, and that's okay, but we're going to hold hands and do this together, but I've got your back. And then people stop lying to themselves when they didn't realize how much they actually were, because it sounded so nice. Oh, right. But it's going to be okay. And it sounds like a nice thing, but it's really so caustic. So that's amazing. I love that. The agreements versus assumptions. Any other nuggets on that?
Well, I mean, let's look at this, because right now we're talking about business. We're talking about business partners, co-founders, executive teams. But I have to tell you, I operate this way with my kids. My kids are 20, 18, 16, and 11. I operate this way with my kids. They know that when I tell them I'm going to do something, they know they can rely on mom. I will do it. And if something comes up and I can't do it, I renegotiate with them, because we live and operate in agreements, not in assumptions.
Yeah, you are by not trying to please your children, you are doing them the best parenting and the best service for yourself as well. It's the gifts for them and you. And I completely get that. And the age ranges, I get that, is 24, 23, 21, 21, 13. So now you have young adults in the world. Now I have young adults in the world. And the beautiful thing about having young adults in the world is now you start to see what worked in your parenting and what didn't work. And because you're still 100%. A parent and you never stop parenting, now there's some of the things that you're actually healing or repairing that you might have messed up when they were 8 years old, or you're doing differently with your youngest than you did with your oldest, because you've learned more now. And these humans who are now in the world, you also see that some of the hardest parenting decisions that you've made, I'm imagining, because we've got some parallels here, for me anyway, I now look at those and go, oh my goodness, my child is functioning, my children are functioning really well in the world among peers who are really struggling. Struggling in this day and age because of the differences. So I really want to acknowledge you for transferring this as I don't want to call it a lifestyle, because I don't think it does enough emphasis or service to what this is. It's an integrous way of living and operating across the board that has nothing but the long-term benefit. It might be harder in the short term because there's some really uncomfortable.
It's always harder in the short term. There's a sacrifice in the short term. There is.
But it has that payoff in the long run. And if the patience is there and the trust is there and the belief is there and the consistency is there, then you can't help but reap the benefits, which is called that fulfillment of something so much greater than yourself. With your children, so much greater. So much, like, you can't, what you've offered the world are other humans who can offer integrity to other humans, and so on and so on and so on. So it's a beautiful thing. And we do that in business too, from teams to other teams and so on and so on. And they bring that to their families. It's a beautiful thing. I
Yeah,
love that. I
100%.
just went off on a tangent on your stuff. It's so
It's
good.
great. It's great. Well, I had one other I was going to share with you, which is tell the
Do it.
truth. And too often we use, again, lies that we tell ourselves to make ourselves feel good about our actions that we're taking, the decisions that we're making. And when you do that, you become blinded by these lies and you are out of integrity with yourself again. Integrity is like one of the greatest assets you can have in business and life. And if the only thing you hear from me today is to make decisions that keep you in alignment with your integrity, you will have the most power in every room you walk into just from that one thing. And a really good example of this is, this was a personal experience. I was, life, business was really a lot in a season of life. And I wasn't as close to God as I wanted to be. And I was going to church and reading scriptures and praying, but my life was really busy. And I made a decision that I'm LDS, and I wanted to go to these special temple ceremonies once a month. And, as soon as I wrote that down as a goal, my mind was like, you got no time. Like you don't have,
Mhm.
there's no time.
And the
When are you
lies
going to fit that
begin.
in?
The lies begin.
And I think it was Covey who says, when I don't have time, what you're really saying is that's not a priority for me.
Mhm.
And so I shifted it because I don't have time. It felt kind of comfortable and it made it easy for me to not figure out how to prioritize this. And so I shifted it to that's not a priority for me. And my life was showing that. And from that place of brutal truth, I had clarity, I had power, and I was able to make some changes and some decisions that ultimately led me, like, very quickly. What happened is somebody at church stood up and said, I'm a working mother. I don't have time to go to the temple, but I've decided I want to. And I found out there's a 5 a.m. session. We could be home by 7 o'clock and still get our kids off to school. Who wants to meet at 4 a.m. with me? And I was like, hello. And
Boom.
Kari, that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gone through some of this truth telling previously. And so, life was supporting me in the decisions that I was making because I was telling the truth and I was catching myself where I was out of integrity with myself and I was shifting. So tell the truth in your partnership, in your business, in your life. If you do this, you will be set free.
Yeah, can we make some t-shirts up that just say tell the truth? Like
Yeah.
TTT, tell the truth. Like we just need a white t-shirt, black printing, or vice versa. Simple, super
Yes.
simple. Tell the truth. Let's do this. T-shirts,
Yeah.
tell the
I had
truth.
a client who he was in a contract with somebody and he just got caught being outside of the contract. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't even anything
Yeah.
bad, but the partner was like, hey, that's not okay. And my client was like, yeah, but it's in the contract. I'm allowed to do this. And I said to him, I said, he's really intelligent. He's very high on IQ scale, Mensa certified. And I said, take me back to when you made that contract because you knew
The
that he wasn't going to
intention.
like this. And that's where this is the level of truth that we're talking about. He was like, Katie, this is really hard to say, but I'm really smart. So I think I'm better than other people. And I think I can manipulate things to get what I want. And so again, everything was legal, but he knew that he was kind of secretly,
Yeah.
covertly getting
Yeah.
what he wanted.
Yeah.
And that's the level of truth that
Loopholes.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's what I call this, and I have a couple of clients who are ridiculously intelligent too, and that's the beauty of that they know they need someone to call them out on their own practices. But one of the things I like to say is, okay, are we going to use our powers for good or evil here? So
Right.
you've got some really serious powers here. How are you going to use them? Are you being manipulative or are we going to actually use them for what they're meant for? So
Yeah.
really, really, really cool stuff. Okay, this is so powerful. I want to you had said something earlier and I felt like this was such a great nugget to wrap up in, and it's you said something along the lines of, if there's one thing to really remember, it's not to be living your life out of integrity, that this is just the most important thing. Is that the final thought you want to leave people with, or is there a different one, or would you modify what I said if I misspoke?
Um, Integrity is really powerful. And there were many inflection points along my own journey in my business as I was doing deals with people where, kind of similar to what my client was expressing, like, I was being honest, but I was definitely trying to manipulate things in my favor. And that is out of integrity. And I have learned that it is way better in the short term. It's uncomfortable in the short term. It is. But you will see a benefit in the long term. And a lot of times you just have to trust in truth. You have to trust in integrity. And this same client, he had someone that he was there was another business deal that wasn't going the way that he wanted. And lawyers were getting involved. It was getting very expensive and it was just being blown way out of proportion. And I said, call the guy, call him. And every time he would try and call the guy, he wouldn't answer. And then the lawyers would then reach out to him. And on one of our sessions, I said, where in this kind of relationship with this broken partnership, where are you making yourself a victim? And where are you not taking responsibility? And he owned it, Kari, and like took responsibility, held himself accountable on that session. And I told him, I'm really proud of you. I don't know where this goes on the other side of this, but you just did something. And something shifted in the universe. And it shifted first in you. And I'm excited to see what happens. And 1 hour later, that guy who would not talk to him, wouldn't give him the time of day, and was just being really unreasonable, picked up the phone and called him and said, hey, I think our lawyers are getting in the middle of all this. What do you say we just settle this over the phone right now? I've got so many examples of that. I have another client who, she wanted to blame the other person, and I helped her take responsibility and even apologize for her piece of it. And her partner was not nice to her and really wanted to make her pay. And 2 days later, that partner was attacked by a swarm of bees and hospitalized. And from the hospital, like on her deathbed, called her and said, I am so sorry. That was me. And so, like, what I'm saying is this goes beyond logic. And yes, integrity is extremely powerful. It's never worth selling your soul for a business deal. It's never worth it.
I love that. And I love the examples because it is so far beyond us. And we don't have a clue what the impact is or the energy shift or whatever it is that is going to happen from what we put out there. And that includes negative or positive. So it might as well be the thing that's going to be the most aligned in order to have the kind of impact that we could have. So I love that. Thank you so much. People can reach out to you. You can be found in various places. There is, you have a case study option going on right now.
Yeah.
And that's a now.katiericardson.com/case study. If someone wants to explore working with you, you have a website, katiericardson.com. You are on Instagram at katie.live or Facebook, katiericardson.live. So you can be reached in all sorts of places. You're going to say another one?
I have a podcast called What's Working Now. That's what's over my shoulder.
What's Working Now podcast. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So podcast, What's Working Now. You can listen in as well, since you clearly love podcasts. And this would be very aligned. So many good things. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us. I could see us having some other interactions in the future. This is fabulous. I encourage everyone to explore a way to get more of you besides what we've just offered. And I look forward to reconnecting. I think this is going to be something that we have so many things to talk about. So thank you so much for being with us, Katie.